My name is Sheila, and I am 61 years old. 6 months ago, I lost my only son, Gregory, in a car accident. I thought burying my child was the worst pain a mother could ever feel. I was wrong. What my daughter-in-law did to me afterward showed me there are deeper wounds than death. She kicked me out of the house I helped buy. She threw me away like I was nothing. But at the will reading, everything changed. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from today. If you have ever loved someone so much, it hurts, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. What happened next will stay with me forever. I married Walter when I was 25 years old. He was a quiet man with kind eyes and hands that could fix anything. A year later, Gregory came into our lives, and everything felt complete. Walter worked at a local factory, while I became a nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital. We never had much money, but we had enough. We had each other. Walter passed away 8 years ago from a sudden heart attack. He was at the kitchen table eating breakfast when it happened. One moment he was there, the next he was gone. I remember screaming his name over and over, shaking his shoulders, begging him to wake up. The paramedics arrived too late. I became a widow at 53, left alone with memories and an empty house. Gregory was my rock during those dark days. He was 30 years old, then already working as a software engineer at a good company. He would drive 2 hours every weekend just to check on me. He would sit with me in the kitchen, where his father died, holding my hand, letting me cry without saying a word. That is the kind of son he was. Patient, loving, present. After Walter died, I threw myself into work. Being a nurse for 30 years had taught me how to compartmentalize pain. I helped other families through their worst moments while quietly carrying my own grief. Gregory worried about me living alone in that big house full of memories. He suggested I sell it and move closer to him. At first, I refused. That house was where I raised him, where Walter and I built our life. But eventually, loneliness won. I sold the house and used part of the money to buy a small apartment near Gregory. Those were good years. Gregory would come over for dinner twice a week. We would cook together, watch old movies, talk about everything and nothing. He called me every single day, even when he was busy, even when he started dating someone new. Her name was Tiffany. Gregory met her at a company party 5 years ago. She was beautiful in a way that made you look twice. Perfect makeup, designer clothes, nails always done. She worked in fashion, something about marketing or branding. I never fully understood what she did, but it seemed important to her. The first time Gregory brought her to meet me, I tried my best to be welcoming. I made pot roast his favorite. I set the table with my good china. I wanted to make a good impression. Tiffany walked in and barely glanced at the food. She picked at her plate like a bird said the meat was overcooked, then spent most of dinner on her phone. When they left, Gregory apologized for her. "She is just nervous," he said. "She will warm up." She never did. Their wedding was 4 years ago. Tiffany wanted something extravagant. A country club venue, designer flowers, a dress that cost more than my car. The total bill was nearly $60,000. Gregory had been saving for a house, but Tiffany insisted this wedding was an investment in their future. He emptied his savings and took out a loan to give her what she wanted. I offered to help, but Tiffany said my money probably was not enough to make a difference. She said it with a smile, but the words cut deep. After the wedding, Gregory called less often. When I asked why, he said Tiffany did not like being interrupted. She needed quiet to work from home. She did not appreciate random phone calls. I understood, or at least I tried to. Marriage requires adjustments. I did not want to be the kind of mother who interfered. But I noticed things. Gregory looked tired when I saw him. He had lost weight. His eyes did not sparkle the way they used to. When I visited their apartment, Tiffany would disappear into the bedroom, leaving us alone, but making her presence known, with occasional sighs and complaints about noise. Gregory would cut our visits short. "Mom, she has a headache," he would say. "Maybe next time." 3 years ago, they decided to buy a house. Not just any house. A 4-bedroom colonial in a gated community. The price tag was $450,000. Gregory called me one evening, his voice hesitant. "Mom, I hate to ask this, but we are short on the down payment. Tiffany found her dream home, and I want to give her this." I did not hesitate. I went to my bank the next morning and withdrew $150,000. It was almost everything I had saved from selling my old house and from 30 years of nursing. I handed Gregory a check and watched his eyes fill with tears. "I will pay you back, Mom," he promised, "and you will always have a place in our home." Tiffany knew about the money. She had to sign the paperwork, but she never thanked me. Not once. Not a card, not a call, not even a casual acknowledgement at dinner. When I moved into their house a few months later, taking a small room on the first floor, near the garage, she acted like I was a tenant who had overstayed her welcome. I told myself I was being too sensitive. I kept my head down, cooked meals cleaned, when I could tried to stay out of her way. I remember the last morning I saw Gregory alive. It was a Tuesday. He was rushing to catch a flight for a work trip. His hair was messy, his tie crooked. I fixed it for him while he gulped down coffee. "Thanks, Mom," he said, with that boyish grin that always made my heart swell. He kissed my forehead the way he used to when he was a teenager, trying to make me laugh. "Love you." Back Thursday. He never came back. The call came at 3 in the afternoon. A state trooper with a careful voice. There had been an accident on the highway. A truck crossed the median. Gregory's car took the impact directly. He was pronounced dead at the scene. "No suffering," the officer said, as if that was supposed to comfort me. I dropped the phone. I heard myself screaming, but it felt like someone else. The room spun. The floor came up to meet me. When I woke up, I was on the couch, and Tiffany was standing over me with her arms crossed. She did not hold me. She did not cry with me. She just stared at me, like I was a problem she had to manage. The funeral was 5 days later. Tiffany made all the arrangements without consulting me. She chose the casket, the flowers, the music. She picked a cemetery across town, even though I begged her to bury Gregory next to Walter. "That is too far from the house," she said. "I do not want to drive an hour every time I visit." I wanted to argue, but I had no strength left. My son was dead. What did geography matter now? I let her have her way, hoping it would bring her some peace, hoping we could grieve together. At the funeral, Tiffany played the role of devastated widow perfectly. She wore designer black, dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief, accepted condolences with a trembling lip. But I watched her. Between conversations, when she thought no one was looking, she would check her phone, scrolling through messages, typing replies. Once, I swear, I saw her smile at something on the screen before quickly composing her face back into sorrow. I told myself I was imagining things. Grief makes you paranoid. It makes you see betrayal in every shadow. Tiffany was young. She had lost her husband. Everyone copes differently. The days after the funeral blurred together. I stayed in my room, mostly unable to eat, unable to sleep for more than a few hours at a time. I would dream of Gregory as a baby, as a teenager, as the man who kissed my forehead that last morning. Then I would wake up and remember he was gone, and the pain would start fresh all over again. Tiffany avoided me. We lived in the same house, but might as well have been strangers. She would leave early in the morning and return late at night. When we did cross paths, she offered nothing more than a curt nod. No words of comfort, no shared tears, no acknowledgement that we had both lost someone we loved. 1 week after the funeral, I heard her on the phone in the living room. Her voice was bright, almost cheerful. I could not make out the words, so I moved closer to the hallway. She was talking about selling the house, about splitting assets, about finally getting what she deserved. My blood ran cold. I retreated to my room before she could see me. I must have misheard. She was probably talking about something else. Insurance papers, financial planning. Surely she was not already thinking about money, while her husband's grave was still fresh. Kyle started coming around. He was Tiffany's younger brother, a man in his late 30s who always seemed to be between jobs. He had borrowed money from Gregory multiple times and never paying it back. Gregory complained about it, but always gave in because it made Tiffany happy. Now, Kyle was at the house almost every day, whispering with Tiffany behind closed doors. They would stop talking whenever I entered the room. 2 weeks after the funeral, Tiffany called a stranger to the house, a real estate appraiser. He walked through every room with a clipboard, taking notes, measuring windows. I watched from the stairs, too stunned to speak. When he left, I asked Tiffany what was going on. Just exploring options, she said without looking at me. I cannot afford the mortgage on my own. I offered to help. I told her I could contribute to the payments. I still had some savings left. We could figure it out together. She laughed. A short, sharp sound that felt like a slap. You do not have enough money to make a difference, Sheila. You never did. The words echoed what she had said years ago about the wedding. But this time, there was no smile to soften them. She looked at me with something close to contempt. In that moment, I realized she had never seen me as family. I was just an obstacle, an inconvenience that came with the house. I went back to my room and sat on the bed my son had bought for me, the bed in the house I had helped purchase. I stared at the wall for hours, trying to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. 1 month after the funeral, Tiffany asked to speak with me. She was sitting in the living room when I came downstairs, her posture rigid, her expression carefully neutral. Kyle was in the kitchen, pretending to make coffee, but clearly listening. Sit down, Sheila, she said. We need to discuss something. I sat in the armchair across from her. My hands were shaking. I clasped them together to hide the trembling. Tiffany spoke without emotion, like she was reading from a script. I need you to move out. I need space to process my grief and heal. Having you here is making that impossible. I stared at her. Move out. Where would I go? She shrugged. You have a sister in New Hampshire, Dorothy Wright. I am sure she would take you in. I reminded her that this was Gregory's house, that I had lived here for 3 years, that I had given $150,000 toward the down payment. Her eyes hardened. That was a gift. There was no contract, no loan agreement. Legally, this house belongs to me now. Gregory is gone. His assets transfer to his wife. I felt the ground shift beneath me. She was right about the law. Gregory and I had never discussed paperwork. Why would we? He was my son. I trusted him. I trusted that family meant something. I asked how long I had. 2 weeks, she said. That should be enough time to pack your things. Kyle emerged from the kitchen, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. He looked at me with undisguised satisfaction. Be practical, Sheila. There is nothing for you here anymore. Gregory is dead. Time to move on. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him he had no right to speak my son's name, but the words stuck in my throat. I was drowning in shock, unable to breathe, unable to fight. Tiffany stood up. The conversation is over. I trust you will handle this with dignity. She walked away, leaving me alone in the living room. Gregory's photo hung on the wall across from me. He was smiling in that picture, his arm around Tiffany, on their wedding day. I wondered if he had any idea who he had married. I wondered if he would forgive me for not seeing it sooner. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I packed slowly, my hands refusing to cooperate. Every object held a memory. The lamp Gregory bought for my room. The quilt I had brought from my old house. The photo albums that chronicled his entire life, from his first steps to his college graduation. Tiffany watched me like a hawk, making sure I did not take anything she considered hers. The crystal vase Gregory gave me for my birthday, hers. The cookbook that belonged to my mother. She claimed Gregory had paid for the shelf it sat on, so everything on that shelf belonged to her estate. I did not have the energy to argue. My neighbor Helen came to visit. When she heard the news, she was horrified. "This is wrong, Sheila," she said. "You helped pay for this house. You have rights." I shook my head. "I do not have any proof. It was cash. A mother helping her son. I never imagined I would need a receipt." Helen hugged me tight. "If you ever need a witness to what happened here," she said, "you call me. I will tell anyone who will listen what that woman did." Dorothy drove down from New Hampshire on my last day. She loaded my boxes into her car while I stood on the front steps, taking one final look at the house where my son had lived, the house where I thought I would grow old, surrounded by family. Tiffany did not come outside to say goodbye. I saw her silhouette in the upstairs window watching, making sure I actually left. I got into Dorothy's car. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked back one last time. The house grew smaller in the rearview mirror until it disappeared around a corner. I had lost my husband. I had lost my son. And now I had lost my home. The drive to New Hampshire took 3 hours. I cried for the first hour. I slept for the second. By the third hour, I had no tears left. Just a hollow emptiness where my heart used to be. Dorothy's house was small, but warm. She had prepared the guest room for me, filling it with extra blankets and a vase of fresh flowers. She did not ask questions that first night. She just made soup, handed me a bowl, and sat beside me in comfortable silence. The first few weeks were dark. I barely left my room. I could not face the world, could not pretend that everything was okay when nothing was. Dorothy brought me meals on a tray. She checked on me every few hours without being intrusive. She let me grieve at my own pace. Slowly, painfully, I began to function again. I would sit on Dorothy's back porch in the mornings, watching squirrels chase each other across the lawn. I started eating regular meals. I took short walks around the block. The world kept turning, whether I wanted it to or not. 2 months after I left the house, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer. Something made me pick up. "Mrs. Sheila," a man's voice said. "My name is Marcus. I am an attorney handling your son, Gregory's estate. I am calling about his last will and testament." I nearly dropped the phone. Gregory's will, I did not know he had one. Marcus explained that Gregory had drafted a will 2 years ago, shortly after purchasing the house. It had been kept confidential, stored in Marcus's office safe. Standard procedure, he said, to be opened only upon death. I asked if Tiffany knew about it. "I informed her yesterday," Marcus said. She seemed quite surprised. I could imagine. Tiffany had assumed she would inherit everything by default. A will complicated things. Marcus invited me to attend the official reading at his office the following week. I told him I would be there. That evening, Tiffany called. Her number flashed on my screen, and I hesitated before answering. Her voice was honey-sweet, dripping with a warmth I had never heard before. "Sheila," she cooed, "how are you? I have been so worried about you." I said nothing, waiting for the real reason behind her call. "I have been thinking," she continued, "about everything. I was wrong to ask you to leave so quickly. Grief made me act terribly. I was wondering if maybe you would like to come back. There is plenty of room, and I would love the company." The audacity took my breath away. 2 months ago, she had thrown me out like garbage. Now she wanted me back. The timing was too convenient. She had learned about the will and was scrambling to protect herself. I told her I was settled in New Hampshire. I said I would see her at the lawyer's office. Her pleasant tone cracked slightly. "Of course. I just hope we can put all of this behind us. For Gregory's sake. For Gregory's sake." She had thrown his mother onto the street and now invoked his name like a shield. I ended the call without saying goodbye. That night, I barely slept. I kept wondering what Gregory had written in that will. Did he know what Tiffany was capable of? Had he seen something I missed? Dorothy found me a lawyer of my own, a sharp woman named Patricia, who specialized in estate disputes. I showed her my bank statements from 3 years ago, the withdrawal of $150,000. I showed her the dates, which matched exactly with the house purchase. Patricia said it was not definitive proof of a loan versus a gift, but it established a paper trail that could be useful. The night before the will reading, I had a dream. Gregory was standing in a field of sunflowers, the kind we used to visit when he was a child. He looked peaceful, happy. He did not speak, but he held my hands and smiled. When I woke up, my pillow was wet with tears, but my heart felt lighter than it had in months. I put on the nicest outfit I owned, a navy blue dress Dorothy had given me for Christmas years ago. I draped a gray cardigan over my shoulders, the one Gregory had bought for my last birthday. It still smelled faintly of the cologne he wore. Dorothy drove me to the lawyer's office. She held my hand the whole way. "Whatever happens," she said, "you are not alone." I squeezed her hand back. I was not sure what the day would bring, but I knew one thing for certain. I would face it with my head held high. The law office was in a brick building downtown, 3 stories of quiet professionalism. Dorothy parked across the street and we walked in together. The receptionist led us to a conference room on the 2nd floor. Tiffany was already there. She sat at the long table with Kyle beside her, both of them dressed in black, as if attending another funeral. When I entered, Tiffany stood and opened her arms for a hug. I let her embrace me briefly, my body stiff, my arms barely touching her back. "Sheila," she murmured, "I am so glad we can finally put this difficult time behind us." I did not respond. I took a seat across from her, Dorothy beside me. Kyle glared at us from across the table. His presence irritated me. He was not family. He had no business being here. Marcus entered a few moments later, a tall man in his 50s, with reading glasses, perched on his nose. He carried a leather folder and a sealed envelope. He greeted each of us, then took his seat at the head of the table. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I will be reading the last will and testament of Gregory Allen, dated March 15th, 2 years ago." Tiffany leaned forward slightly, her fingers drumming against the table. Kyle whispered something in her ear. She nodded without taking her eyes off the lawyer. Marcus opened the folder and began to read. I, Gregory Allen, being of sound mind, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. I make this will freely and with full understanding of my assets and obligations. He paused to turn a page. To my beloved mother, Sheila Allen, you gave me everything. You raised me alone after Dad died. You worked double shifts so I could go to college. You gave me $150,000 from your retirement so I could buy a house for my family. That money was not a gift, Mom. It was a loan, and I always intended to pay you back. I felt tears welling in my eyes. Gregory had remembered. He had understood. Marcus continued, therefore, I direct that, upon the sale of the family home at 42 Maple Drive, the first $150,000 from the proceeds shall be paid directly to my mother, Sheila Allen, as repayment of her contribution to the down payment. Tiffany's face went pale. Her mouth opened, then closed. Kyle grabbed her arm, but she shook him off. Marcus kept reading. After repayment of my mother's contribution, the remaining proceeds from the house sale shall be divided equally between my wife, Tiffany Allen, and my mother, Sheila Allen. Each shall receive 50% of the remainder. I heard Tiffany inhale sharply. She had expected to inherit everything. Instead, she would have to share. But Marcus was not finished. I have also maintained a separate savings account in my name. Only, he read currently, containing approximately $80,000. The entirety of this account shall be transferred to my mother, Sheila Allen, upon my death. $80,000. I had no idea Gregory had been saving on the side. He must have been hiding it from Tiffany, squirreling away money for years. Additionally, my life insurance policy, in the amount of $200,000, shall be divided equally between my wife and my mother. Each shall receive $100,000. Tiffany was gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles had turned white. Kyle was furiously typing on his phone, probably consulting some lawyer friend about how to contest the will. Marcus set down the document and looked at me directly. There is one more clause, Mrs. Sheila. Gregory included what we call a protective provision. He picked up the paper again. If, at the time of my death or thereafter, my wife Tiffany takes any action that causes harm, distress, or displacement to my mother, whether financial, emotional, or physical, her share of my estate shall be reduced by 50%. That portion shall be transferred, instead, to my mother. The room went silent. I heard my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Marcus turned to me. Mrs. Sheila, I have been informed that you were asked to leave the family home approximately 1 month after your son's passing. Is this accurate? I nodded, unable to speak. Can you describe the circumstances? I found my voice. She gave me 2 weeks' notice. She said she needed space. She said the house belonged to her now, and I had no right to stay. Did she acknowledge the $150,000 you contributed? She called it a gift. She said there was no proof it was a loan. Marcus made a note. Is there anyone who can corroborate the manner in which you were asked to leave? Dorothy spoke up. I can. Sheila called me in tears the day it happened. I drove down to help her pack. I added my neighbor Helen also knows. She offered to testify about what she witnessed. Marcus nodded slowly. Based on the circumstances you have described, and pending verification, the protective clause in Gregory's will appears to have been triggered. Mrs. Tiffany's share of the estate will be reduced by 50%, with that portion transferring to Mrs. Sheila. Tiffany exploded. This is ridiculous. She jumped to her feet, her chair scraping against the floor. You cannot do this. I am his wife. That money is mine. Kyle stood up beside her. We will contest this will. This is clearly the result of undue influence. The old woman manipulated him. Marcus remained calm. You are welcome to pursue legal action, but I should inform you that this will was drafted by Gregory alone, without Mrs. Sheila's knowledge. She was not aware of its contents until today. Any claim of undue influence would be difficult to support. Tiffany pointed at me, her finger shaking. You did this. You poisoned him against me. You never wanted us to be happy. I looked at her steadily. I gave you my son. I gave you my money. I gave you my home. And you threw me away the moment he was gone. She had no response. Kyle grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door. This is not over, he snarled. We will sue. We will tie this up in court for years. They stormed out, slamming the door behind them. The room fell quiet. Marcus gathered his papers methodically. I sat frozen in my chair, processing everything that had just happened. Then, Marcus pulled a smaller envelope from his folder. There is one more item, he said gently. A personal letter from Gregory addressed to you. He asked that I give it to you privately. He slid the envelope across the table. My name was written on the front in Gregory's handwriting. Just seeing those familiar loops and curves made my chest ache. I will give you a moment, Marcus said. He and Dorothy stepped outside, leaving me alone. I held the envelope for a long time before opening it. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter inside. Dear Mom, it began. If you are reading this, I am no longer with you. I am so sorry. I never wanted to leave you alone. I want you to know that I saw more than you think. I know Tiffany has not always treated you well. I know she made you feel unwelcome in our home, the home you helped us buy. I should have stood up for you more. I should have protected you better. That is my greatest regret. I made this will because I was afraid. Afraid that if something happened to me, Tiffany would not take care of you. She is not a bad person, Mom. But she is not a good one either. She loves money more than people. I knew that when I married her, but I thought I could change her. I was wrong. Please do not hate her. Hate is a poison that hurts the person holding it more than anyone else. Just live your life. Find joy again. Remember me when you see sunflowers, or taste pot roast, or hear that old song Dad used to sing. I love you more than words can say. You were the best mother anyone could ask for. Thank you for everything. Your son, Gregory. I pressed the letter to my heart and wept. But these were different tears. Not just grief. Gratitude. Relief. Love. Dorothy came back in and wrapped her arms around me. She did not ask what the letter said. She just held me while I cried. Gregory had known. He had seen through Tiffany all along. And even from beyond the grave, he had found a way to protect his mother. I looked up at the ceiling, imagining him somewhere above, watching. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you, my boy. The weeks following the will reading passed in a blur of paperwork and legal proceedings. Tiffany did hire a lawyer, just as Kyle had threatened. They contested the will, claiming Gregory had been mentally unstable when he wrote it. They demanded depositions and document reviews. They tried everything to delay the process and drain my resources. But Marcus had prepared for this. Gregory's will was ironclad, witnessed by 2 neutral parties, and notarized by a licensed professional. The protective clause was unusual, but entirely legal. Tiffany's attorney eventually advised her to settle rather than risk losing even more in court. The house sold in early spring for $480,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage, there was $320,000 left. I received my $150,000 first, just as Gregory had specified. The remaining $170,000 was split, but because Tiffany had triggered the protective clause, her share was cut in half. She received $42,500. I received $127,500. Combined with Gregory's savings account,